Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today I wanted to go through how I did a plus 17 Ecodome on my 701 Shadopan Brewmaster. You can see that in the top left here, I've only ever timed a 10 of this key. I kind of walked in here and I was like, hey, I want to see if I can push my boundaries a little bit. So we went on LFG, grabbed a couple people, and I got a couple friends to sign up, and here we go. In this key, I'm going to show you how I did every pull, how I kind of abused the Ox statue AoE taunts to make up for some of my threat problems at this gear level, and how I lived some of the trickier tank pulls in this dungeon. Unfortunately, I don't have an action tracker in this video, but I will walk through every pull, kind of like what I wanted to accomplish in each and every step, and most importantly too, how you can kind of circumvent having gear and really just apply the basics of Brewmaster to any kind of dungeon or pull. I think in this series, I kind of wanted to highlight that I do want to get 3,500 in my Brewmaster without actually ever equipping more gear. So whatever I have on right now, especially the new 4 set, that's going to be it. And we're going to kind of go from there. In this first pull, you're going to see that I go in here and I'm making sure that I use my weapons of order to kind of generate up my 4 stacks into my exploding keg. However, you're going to notice that throughout this video, due to my gear and threat problems, because I think everybody in this dungeon is about 15-20 item levels higher than me, sometimes I do have to do a pretty rough order of operations here to get set up. I go into this back, I set a keg smash out, I set down my Ox statue to AoE taunt everything in, and unfortunately the Gorger just kind of sits out there as well, but once I'm in the back, I'm pretty stable in Bloodlust and in Fort Brew. I'm making sure that I'm using Keg Smash on CD and using either my Blackout combo from Blackout Kick into Keg Smash or Tiger's Bomb. I do manage to get off the Exploding Kick there a little bit later, and as you can see in the bottom right, I am doing 10 million DPS, which for my gear I think is pretty good. I think Brewmaster does an absolute ton of damage right now, and it's a lot of fun. As much as I can, I am trying to put those Blackout combos into my Keg Smash. This season, we are back to playing Shadopan. And what that means is we no longer have access to that 2 stack of Celestial Brew or Celestial Infusion. I have had a ton of fun kind of like relearning this, as it's been a while since I played Shadopan, but as soon as I got the new 4 set, I swapped over. Kind of your game plan is with Shadopan as compared to Master of Harmony is you're going to be a little bit baseline tankier, but you're going to have a little bit less agency over your control. Master of Harmony comes with a stronger Purify and that second charge of Celestial Brew, which is extremely helpful in self-sustain. But Shadopan, because of the way in interactions with Flurry Strikes, and as well, now that we have Celestial Infusion, I think Shadowpan's like pretty baseline tanky, and I don't think in this Keystone I was ever actually that terrified, other than maybe a couple face pulls. As I get into the second pack in the dungeon, I am using that Weapons of Order again, stacking it up a little bit, and using that Chi Burst. Again as well too, because Master of Harmony has a really overpowered Chi Burst, it's not as good in Shadopan, but it's still a good button to press. Kind of what you should be looking at doing is still following the same procedures as you would in any other season. Make sure that you're using your Purifying Brew when your stagger hits over 100% and you need some help. And as well, monitoring for that Jin Impaler's talent. Talent on the right hand side of the tree makes it so that you heal yourself for 15% of stagger cleared after you hit Purify, meaning that you always want to ride in red stagger as Brewmaster. The second kind of part of that is our Mastery of Nizal, which allows you to gain additional attack power, or sorry, mastery based on the level of stagger you have. That does mean that you always want to be playing in yellow or red stagger as much as possible, but as the key level goes up, and as you can see just due to my gear, I'm going to be playing in red stagger for the most part anyway. Going into this first boss, I do grab those 2 Ravaging Scavengers, and I'm going to be pulling it into Azakar. Azakar does nothing particular for tank, so he's not really too much of a challenge, but I will show you here that you can use that Black Ox statue to make sure you're picking up the adds relatively quickly. On single target now, instead of putting your blackout combos into Keg Smash, you're going to be trying to put a lot more of them into that Tiger's Palm, as it's going to be doing a lot more single target damage. I think especially to an easy rule of thumb is that on trash packs, especially as you're learning and mastering Brewmaster, you should be probably putting more effort and resource into that Blackout Kick into Keg Smash, as it's going to give you a lot of Brew CDR. I think on bosses, Tiger's Palm is also going to be a large source of damage and as well CDR, but you want to avoid doing things like Blackout Kick into Celestial Brew or Celestial Infusion and Blackout Kick into Purify. Both of those combinations do absolutely nothing for your resource generation and will only pause the amount of damage that you're taking. So it's not really going to be anything useful for Black Oak Kick Purify, but it is going to increase the amount of Black Ox brews that you get, Celestial Infusions, and Purifies if you are putting all those Blackout combos into Tiger's Palm or Keg Smash. As you can see here, I'm actually getting beat up a little bit by these scavengers, and as we kind of go into this phase, as I'm not able to hit the boss, I spend a little bit more time making sure that I kite these out and get some distance on them. I did queue up a Blackout Kick there into Celestial Infusion, which was okay, but not really intended, and I am going to be pressing that Weapons Order here, going Keg Smash, Rising Sun Kick, Keg Smash, then I follow those Blackout Kicks into Tiger's Palms. On this boss specifically, you can definitely use your Exploding Keg just to pick up the ads. I think Exploding Keg in a lot of cases can be a lot of pad damage, but it's also a lot of threat, and remember too that it's one of your best tools for being able to stabilize in an otherwise pretty scary pool. I see a lot of guides suggest that you have to absolutely save, Exploding Keg for damage once you get your Weapons of Order kind of stacked up. And I think that that's actually pretty true. I think you definitely want to be utilizing your Keg Smash if you can towards the end of your Blackout or your Weapons of Order ramp. So when you have 4 stacks of Weapons of Order. During this ramp, you're going to be doing the most damage because you have 10% more mastery from Weapons of Order, and you're going to be doing 32% increased damage to all mobs affected by it. So saving that Exploding Keg will be really good, but remember too that if you need to use it defensively, Exploding Keg does make it so that melee attacks from mobs will hit 99% less for the next 3 seconds. I am making sure that I beat up these Frenzied Mites as I get into this boss here, and the first boss of the dungeon is going to be going down. Again, nothing too particularly challenging here from a tank perspective, but walking through this, there are a couple tricks you can do. As you can see right now, I am sitting on Nizao, which is located at the bottom of my screen, and I am sitting on Weapons of Order. One thing I would like to improve about my UI as I start playing my Brewmaster more is that I would like to get, obviously, a Shadopan tracker. I don't really know what happened to mine. I might have purged it when I rebuilt my UI a couple seasons ago. So unfortunately, you can't really see here clearly my Flurry Strike stacks. Fortunately enough, though, I don't think the reason of this video is to showcase exactly what I'm doing with Flurry Strikes, but in future videos do expect that is something you should be tracking. I didn't want to be cringe and do the pre-stack in here either, but managing and stacking Flurry Strikes before a pull is extremely helpful, as it's going to allow you to garnish and get a little bit of threats going into new pulls, and it's going to help stabilize you depending on what buff you get. Now, this part of the dungeon is what I consider a little bit more scary for tanks, as you're going to have to deal with these Sentinels. However, there are a couple tricks on Brewmaster that I'm going to show you to make this really, really easy. As I go in here, you can see that I have Dampen Harm, Fortifying Brew, I have Diffuse Magic, and as well, I am running a Ritual Mud, which is only 684. Remember that going into this dungeon, I'm only 700-ish item level, so I do have a lot of last season's gear on. I've pretty much just been doing 1 or 2 keys a week to vault fill my Brewmaster as I prepare for Turbo Boost. As I go in here, I'm going to be hitting my first global, just a Blackout Kick on that Sentinel. I'll be using a Keg Smash in the middle pack, taunting in, then kicking our caster, and placing myself to be situated with the Sentinel. I do hit a big Celestial Infusion there, and I'm rolling Fort Brew right now. And for every single one of these Sentinel AoEs, I'm going to be doing one of 2 things. The first of which is I want to be rotating my defensives. So when the Sentinel does an Arcane Slash, either be wanting to hit Diffuse Magic, Dampen Harm, or Fort Brew. I don't think Celestial Brew or Celestial Infusion is really enough to deal with the Sentinel, and I would recommend using a little bit more than that and using that Celestial Brew on top to make sure that you're stable through the Arcane Dot. The second trick I want to show you is you can actually negate that dot completely. What I mean by that is you can actually roll out max range of the Arcane Strike and make sure that it never hits you. As you're going to see in the next pack, where the Sentinel lives quite a bit longer because we don't have any damaging cooldowns, we're going to be going into the Sentinel, and I'm going to be rolling out a couple of those Arcane charges. You might be asking, Rye, why don't you roll out every single charge? You definitely can, but when you're playing with a bunch of melee classes, I think like one of the best things you can do as a tank is enable your team. Enabling your team does mean keeping mobs stacked together and in a position where your melee aren't missing globals having to run or move. And I find that when if you roll out for a second and all the mobs chase you, you have a chance that the mobs are going to run in front of the overcharged Sentinel slash and cause you a little bit of grief. Again, I started off that pull with a Blackout Celestial or Infusion, and I hit Dampen Harm on this overcharged Sentinel slash. Right now, as Dampen Harm is fading, I am pretty cozy for the duration of that debuff, but for this next one, I'm going to want to make sure that I press something big. However, because I don't have anything, I end up rolling out the charge, and the mob spell queues and doesn't do the slash. I roll out again, I roll back in, and as you can see, I completely negated the debuff from the mobs. I do hit a leg sweep, and unfortunately it's kind of hard for me to get in there to be able to kick the mobs, so we are going to get them out here and looking to ROP if needed. I do roll out that Sentinel charge, and I'm back in the combat. One of the scariest things here is you can see that this pull is really hard on my Brewmaster and my healer. We did have a couple, or a death there on this pull, but we were able to recover. I would say the trash in here actually feels pretty scary, I think. I didn't really know what to expect going from just a +10 to a 17 on my Brewmaster. And as you can see, like, you know, even though I'm sustaining myself quite a bit, I'm doing 2.7 mil HPS here, I am receiving a lot of healing from my healer, especially towards the end of this pull. I'm holding on to Nizao, and I'm making sure that I kind of pull everything together here and pull some resources for the next pull in the dungeon. I would say that overall, I kind of do miss playing Breath of Fire, and this is my experiment of not playing it, but I think as I get into high keys, there's a chance I might just pick it up for one talent. I don't know many other talents in the tree that are as high value as being able to get a 10% on-demand DR from Breath of Fire if needed. And I think actually too, it might have actually been worth the point in this Keystone, but I do see a lot of Brewmasters playing this no breath build, so I said, hey, let's give it a try. As I get into this pull, as you can see, I'm stacking up my weapons of order, I'm going in here, hitting that Chi Burst, and I'm trying to put out as much damage as possible. The nice thing about Brewmaster is the more damage you do, the actual kind of like tankier you kind of are, and as you're kind of spending more with Keg Smash, it does mean you're getting more cooldown reduction. As you're getting more Tiger's Palms, you're getting more cooldown reduction. And as you're spending more as Shadopan, you're going into more Flurry Strikes, which does mean more damage, more sustain, etc. As you can see, I ride that red stagger quite frequently until I think I'm in danger, then I just stagger or purify for that Gin Impalers, or I'm using one of my charges just to get it on cooldown. Ideally, you don't really want to sit on purify charges just because of how fast your CDR is. And ideally too, you want to be using Blackout's Brew as early as possible because all of your Keg Smashes and Blackout kicks are going to help roll that CDR. As I get situated here, I hit Fort Brew, I go into my combo, and I'm waiting to get back that Weapons of Order in 9 seconds. As you can see, my threat was a little bit sketchy there because I didn't have Weapons of Order or Exploding Keg or Chi Burst right away, so I did almost let one of my DPS players die from threat, but I did manage to get situated and stabilized a little bit here. I would say the thing that you have to be really cautious of in these packs are the Phase Blades. The Phase Blades are the mob that are going to be hitting you kind of the hardest outside the Sentinels, and they do kind of like these little flurries, like they're these dual wielding little mobs. And if you're not really careful, especially if you get hit in the back by these, it's very easy to just fall over. I would try to respect these mobs and not pull too many of them. As you can see right here, I'm pulling 4 of them, and I'm just kind of getting my ass beat, so. I do pull 1 Ruin Stalker here, and I'm going to be pulling it into the Sentinel pull. The reason why is I'm going to be doing that pack after the boss, and I rather just take 1 more Ruin Stalker in here and fight 2 while we're fighting the Sentinel, and then fight all that trash extra on its own. We do have cooldowns here, we do have that, we have Warrior CDs coming up in 20 seconds with Avatar, and we go into the Sentinel. Ideally as a tank, you should be looking to pull the Sentinel when your DPS are just about to have cooldowns up. The reason why is the damage priority on this mob is actually way more important as the mob gets closer to breaking its shield. That's because when this mob transitions, it's going to be doing ticking AoE damage to your entire party, and you want it dead as quickly as possible from 50 to 0. As you can see for that first Arcane Slash, I am sitting in Weapons Order and I hit Diffuse Magic as I'm trying to make sure to keep all these mobs stacked together so they can die. I do roll out this next slash, roll back in, and I'm making sure that I'm giving myself some space to not be getting hit in the back by these porting phase blades and ruin stalkers. As this pack dies, this will be triggering the boss RP and the boss will be spawning into the room. Again, I don't think this is a really difficult boss. I think all the trash in here is a little bit difficult, but I don't think the bosses necessarily are from a tanking perspective. One of the things I really like to do when on my Preservation Evoker, or, sorry, I guess I like when my tanks do, is when they pull trash into this boss for funnel. In my composition specifically, we don't really have any funnel classes, but however, we're going to be pulling some trash in anyway, just to be able to cleave it down. Unfortunately, the boss RP will not start until these Ruin Stalkers are dead, except for this last one, which I pulled over from the side. As the boss spawns in here, I'm going to be grabbing all of this trash, and we're going to be lusting on Gather. I pull with Crackling Jade as this one Phase Blade teleports and does go try to beat up my team. I get stabilized here with that Celestial Infusion, I hit that Ritual Mud Trinket, and we're going to be hitting Bloodlust. We did all overlap our kicks. Remember, we're not really in comms here with everybody, so it's kind of hard to orchestrate, but once you get that mob kicked in, you can use things like ROP, Leg Sweep, and Paralysis to kind of pseudo-kick them and make sure that none of the kicks go off on your team. As I'm in weapons order and my Fort Bruce faded, I'm still going to be pretty tanky for the duration of Bloodlust, but I do need to be cognizant of these teleporting Phase Blades, which are going to be beating me up. In conjunction with the bleed debuff on this boss, I can take a lot of damage in the start of the fight. If you are playing Dwarf, this is dwarfable, so you can remove it as I did, and the rest of the damage is all physical. So this fight, you'll have a little bit of magic damage from this intermission, which if you really need to, remember you can use Diffuse Magic if you feel like you're getting beat up. And then I would use things like Dampen Harm, Nizao, and Celestial Infusion for any one of those subsequent bleeds on this encounter. As this phase ends with Destabilize, we are going to be going back into the regular boss fights, and it's going to be pretty easy for me just to rotate either of my defensives. Remember, I am running that Ritual Mud Trinket, which, you know, low-key at 684 item level is still pretty good. I unfortunately doesn't have any main stat on it, but I do really like that trinket, and I think in this Keystone, if I didn't have an on-use like that, I might have struggled a little bit more. The reason why I like on-use trinkets like Ritual Mud is they give you agency. I think overall, you can definitely say that a heavy agility stat stick is going to be a lot better than Ritual Mud. My other trinket, I think, is a Pacemaker, which is like really great for Brewmaster, but ultimately, I personally just love the idea that I don't really have, if my healer's struggling or I fall behind, that I have a backup plan. And at the end of the day, I think if you're running something like an on-use trinket, like Ritual Mud, you're gonna have a pretty easy time dealing with a lot of mechanics that you think you might have otherwise have struggled with. Good examples of this are encounters like Big Mama in Floodgates or the first boss in Priory of Sacred Flame. As we enter into the second destabilize of the encounter, I'm starting to think about what we need to do next. I haven't really fallen over yet. I have quite a bit of count at 56%, and I'm going to be orchestrating the last couple pulls in this dungeon. I do make one critical mistake, which I will show you after this boss. As we get into one of the last trash pulls, I do face pull a couple mobs, but for the most part, we end up being okay for time. Unfortunately there, my team did move last second and I did get speared, but even if you do get speared as a tank, it shouldn't really matter too much. You can probably just go about your regular order of operations and be just fine on this encounter. I do go over to the right, and I'll be finishing the last pull of this segment in the dungeon, which is a couple Phase Blades, a Rune Stalk or a Far Stalker, and a Ritualist. I do hit my weapons order, my Nizao, and I'm starting to ramp up my full weapons as I go into that exploding gig. As you can see, I'm still doing quite a bit of damage, even on just 6 mobs. I'm doing 8-9 million. I'm really excited to see what kind of damage I'll be able to do when, one, I'm actually properly tracking my flurry strikes, and two, when I actually have more gear. I think knowing that we're probably going to be about 730 item level by the end of October is pretty crazy to think about. I think like all the keys before now are just going to be completely redundant, so I'm hoping that by the end of the season, or at least I'm thinking that we're probably going to be seeing a lot of like 22, 23 keys for dungeons like Gambit, Streets, Ecodome. I think looking at right now, when people are kind of capped out at 720-ish, and not even everybody's there, right? Like, people are definitely already doing 20 keys with not max gear. So we're probably going to see another key level and a half or two. Alright, so this pull is actually, I don't know if I like this pull yet, but I'm basically pulling these double ritualists in together, and I'm going to be pulling 4 bugs in. The reason why I don't like this is it's actually kind of terrifying, and I'm going to show you exactly why. It's one thing to deal with 2 ritualist kicks, and I think we do an okay job at that, but then when we bring in these bugs on the side, which is kind of the standard route now that you would expect in some of your ecodomes, these things absolutely blast. And when I say absolutely blast, I mean if you take 1 Gloom bite, chances are they will kill you. So as these kind of creepers come in here, I'm picking up threats, and I'm going to be proxy kiting them for the duration of this pull. What do I mean by proxy kites? What I mean is I'm going to be sidestepping these Gloom bites as much as possible. As you can see on the plates, the Gloom bite starts to cast, and I walk away from it. They will start to recast and continually try to recast over and over and over again as I kind of walk out of them, but the whole idea is I can just completely dodge them if I'm smart. One of the problems is if I take one of these Gloom bites at this item level, there's a good chance I just die. These things hit immensely hard, and you know, I've had tanks in here in my 19 or my 20 Ecodome on my Press Evoker just fall over to 1 Gloom bite, and as you can see, I took one there and I'm almost going down. My Shaman does drop that Spirit Link totem for me, and I'm trying to get stabilized here as I go into the next pack. Once these Phase Blades die, I'm going to be trying to chain up the stairs into one of the last pulls of the dungeon. However, I make a wrong turn and end up pulling a couple extra mobs we didn't want. Again, just keep running around in circles with these Gloom bites. If you're playing with an Ellie Shaman, they might hit you a little bit, but if you are consistent with your movement, it's going to be okay. And these creepers are really, really, really efficient count, so you definitely want to be pulling them. As you can see, I turn around here and I make a wrong turn. I should have gone around the ruins, but I come up here right into this pack. Unfortunately, we did not want to play this 3-pack because I did not want to play this mini-boss. Any of the pack speakers I find, especially in melee comps, are pretty good to skip because they do require a purge and require target swapping. They have a ton of health, and you want to be avoiding these at all costs. The way you make up for it is you pull more of these creepers, and you just pull all the phase blades in this area. Ideally, like I said, I would have been able to skip this back speaker, and it would have been more than fine. However, I just kind of walked into it. This will make the rest of our dungeon, though, a little bit easier as I won't have to pull any of these creepers onto the boss, meaning that I'll have to do less sidestepping and I'll have more uptime. I think by this point in the dungeon, you can probably tell that Brew's got a pretty easy time living in here, and there's nothing that's just gonna like kill you outright. I think one of the biggest challenges you do have to be mindful of is if you do pull these creepers to not forget to micro kite those Gloom bites. If you take too many of those Gloom bites, you're just gonna die on any key level, and I think it putting up a massive healing absorb too, on top of the fact that it hits pretty hard, is a little bit of a problem for any tank. As I go in here, I'm going to be pulling these Ruin Stalkers, the Ritualist, and the Far Stalker, and we're going to be pulling this all together. As you can see, there is one creeper at the top of the stairs. Normally, I would also pull that one in, but because we have this extra mob from the last pack, I decided I was going to pull it late. These Arcane Zaps are only one kick here, so making sure that you just have them assigned or you're in coordination with your team on a higher key would be a good idea if you're going to be doing this pull. Once they're kicked once, they won't recast immediately, so you do have a little bit of time making sure before the next one goes off. I do think this pull is actually low-key kind of hard, and the reason why is like you have a lot of mobs teleporting around, and when mobs teleport around, chances are you're going to be getting hit in the back more, and when you're taking more back hits, you're going to be in red stagger more often, and it's going to be harder for you to stabilize. As you can see, even then, like just trying to micro-kite a little bit, I do get hit by that Gloom bite after it queues up a couple times, but it's not too bad because I don't have a lot of other damage incoming right now as this pack's almost dead. We have about 7 minutes left in the Keystone, and we're going to have about 89% count, which means we only have 2.5 pulls left. Because I did pull that packed speaker on accident, what's going to happen here is I'm going to be skipping these creepers up top, and we're not going to be pulling them into the boss. What I would have really liked to showcase, and actually kind of I had a video from a little bit while ago, is I did actually try this key at 685 item level, and we ended up losing just to the final pack of the dungeon. What was kind of crazy is I did it late at night, no comms, just an LFG, and they said, hey, that's economics, let's give it a try. And I almost actually timed this Keystone at 685, but it was definitely a lot more challenging, and I think a lot more of a burden for my team. I had to be a lot more careful, and at the same time, I had to spend a lot more resource making sure that I was kiting, making sure that I was topped at all times, etc. As this pack speaker goes down, I'm going to be chaining this, and this is going to be our kind of effective last pull of the dungeon. Again, these pack speakers are just a huge time sink, and even though they give good counts, there's better count elsewhere in the dungeon. However, you do have to fight these last two regardless of what happens because you need them for the boss RP to spawn. Overall on this, I am just following my regular rotation, which is that blackout kick into keg smash, filling with rising sun kick where I need to, and just pressing that type blackout kick tiger's palm for filler. What we need for the rest of the count of the dungeon is we are going to be pulling in this trash pack from up the hill. We are going to be pulling this into boss, and if you have a funnel class, they're going to love you for it, but right now we don't really have any funnel classes, so we're just kind of pulling them in to cleave them down. As you can see, we have about 5 minutes left in the key, which I think is enough time, so I'm taking a little bit slow here and killing off this packed speaker, and as well these phase blades. I do hit that touch of death, which clears my stagger and activates the boss RP. As we do break the CC here, I am going to be taunting the Soul Scribe, we are going to be pressing Bloodlust, and I will be ramping all of my damage buttons here to make sure that we get stable. I can go in here and use a ROP to get that Ritualist in if I need to, but I was able to pick it up with just a kick. I ROP the mob into the center of the group, and now we're just rotating kicks on this mob and blasting the boss. Again, I would say that this is another encounter, which doesn't matter too much from a tank damage perspective, but I would make sure that you're just following your regular rotation and throwing out Vivifies where you can. If you are like me there and miss one of the debuffs, you are going to have to press something because that damage intake that you deal from the dot could be pretty heavy. If you do decide to pull in a bunch of trash on this boss, I would make sure that you are proxy kiting or micro kiting all of those Gloom bites. I would have liked to showcase that, but maybe in a future video, or maybe when I release like a prop ballad or a VDH video, I will show the tricks of what you need to do to be able to pull all of that trash in here. At this point in the dungeon, that's pretty much all there is from the Brewmaster perspective. I was able to handle this dungeon pretty easily despite my item level, and I will continue to try to do this little mini goal of trying to get 3500 without equipping any more gear. At the point of the recording of this video, I do actually have a couple more runs recorded, including a couple 16s and 17 streets, but I think before I upload my next one, I am going to try to get a hauls done or something like that, and kind of show and walk through some of the more difficult parts of taking those dungeons, including living the double Reaver after the first boss. But there you have it. This is how I timed my +17 Ecodome on my 701 Brewmaster. Hopefully this video helped you walk through a couple of these more difficult pulls, showed you a couple tricks, and more importantly, helped you out on your journey of either becoming a better Mythic Plus player or on your journey to title this season. Do you think I missed anything? Do you think there's something critically important that I should be doing? Let me know. Again, I'm not a Brewmaster expert. I'm just a guy who loves playing Brew when it's around. And at this point, I will be playing in Turbo Boost, but I don't really plan on pushing it seriously, as I have been having a ton of fun on my other tanks. Anyway, feel free to drop something in comments. Thanks for the support, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.